If anyone buys into the Bronica SQ series of cameras, you will eventually need to make a choice. Do you use the S series lenses or the PS series of lenses? People say that the newer PS series of lenses are better, they're sharper, they're clearer, and they have much better coatings. But is it worth buying them over the S series of lenses? Well, let's take these 150mm lenses and find out. So here we have the 150 f4 PS lens and we have the 150 f3.5 S lens. And just looking at these lenses straight on, we can clearly tell that there is some significant ergonomic and optical differences. So let's take a look at the PS lens. For one, the ergonomics are very different. The lens has much larger focusing grip and ring. It also has a much wider and larger and easier to move aperture ring, which is actually quite nice. Changing the aperture on the S lens is kind of tricky. Meanwhile, the PS lens is much easier. Also, the PS lens can do half stop, which is really nice compared to the S lens. The focusing is pretty much identical on both of them. They both have roughly the same amount of focus throw, and they're both exceptionally smooth focusing lenses. The filter threads are actually the same. They're both 67mm, so no difference there. I actually use a stepping ring on my lens by default to 77mm, so that the filter threads are all the same on all my Bronica lenses, making it much easier to use things like filters, and it's just handier. Other differences include the two lens controls. The first one is the depth of preview switch, and that will stop down the lens so you can preview your depth of field. This is a fiddly little bugger, by the way, to use. Meanwhile, on the PS lens, it's a little slider that you slide to the side, and then you can see the aperture changing inside the lens, giving you your depth of field preview, which is nice. Another difference between them is the Mode Selector. So on the S lens you have this little screw. You actually have to undo a screw, and that allows you to screw this out and it will switch to Mode, which is used for ultra long exposure so you don't waste your battery. I'm not going to do that because that's really fiddly, but the screw is captive so it won't fall out. Meanwhile, on the PS lens it's just a little pull pin, so we just grab it, pull it, and then we can just slide it over into Mode. Much easier, much faster, and much more convenient. In terms of optics, the PS lens is much newer and apparently has better coatings, which is something we're going to have to test. And from just looking at these lenses, you can tell that they have different optical formulas. The PS lens is considerably longer, and its front element is further away from the lens mount, meaning this does have the potential to be considerably sharper, which we're also going to have to test. So let's get these on the camera and do some shooting. For this experiment, I shot some Fuji Probe 400H. I also pushed the film one stop. I did this so I could shoot at different apertures and keep my shutter speed high. I was shooting a 150mm lens handheld on a medium format camera. Any kind of mirror slap or shake would be amplified, so keeping those shutter speeds high was actually quite important in order to get nice sharp images to really show off the capabilities of the lenses. So let's take a look at some of the test images. The first image we're going to look at is these deer chilling here in the park. And if we just zoom in on this 1:1, we can actually see there's lots of detail in the deer. They were a little bit far away for this shot, but you can still make out most of the detail, and in the trees, lots of detail there as well. This was taken at f11 at 1/250th of a second. Now if we take a look at the S version of this, we'll ignore the color difference for now because it's not really important to what we're testing. You can see that we're not quite able to make out as much detail, but this is much more obvious in the tree, where it's just a muddy mess compared with the PS lens. It's just the PS lens is resolving way more detail and it's just much better in general here. So the PS lens definitely seems to be a little bit sharper. To test the lens's flare resistance, I took this shot here with the sun directly in frame, and the lens actually held up surprisingly well. On the right hand side we can see a little bit of flare and ghosting and some color issues, but it held up surprisingly well compared to what the S lens did, which is really badly. I got this huge kind of blue ghost kind of flare happening. The resistance is really bad. All the colors have shifted. Even the sky up here is completely shifted color, and it's just not very good. So the flare resistance on the PS lens is way better. So those coatings really do make a difference. And once again, for sharpness, if we zoom in on the S lens on the bridge, you can kind of make out the columns on this bridge, but in the PS lens, you can make them out much more easily. It's way better, and this is the focus point as well. So this PS lens does actually seem to be considerably better overall. We have one more example here. Here's the PS lens again. This is a shot of the canal. Nothing too dramatic here, you know, tiny little hint of flaring, but colors look kind of natural. Looks pretty good. Meanwhile, the S lens, we've got the same issue again with the weird flaring happening over here in particular. It's very strong. A lot of orange color shift in this, and not very nice to look at. In conclusion, the PS lens is better. It's sharper, it has better flare resistance, it has better coatings, and it just seems to be easier to use. It's more ergonomic, the controls are much nicer on it. It looks like I'm going to be switching to PS lenses in the future. That's it guys for this video. Hope you found it informative, and I'll see you next time.